Greetings, dear friends, fellow programmers, and those aspiring to be. If you were following along on this journey of scopes in JavaScript, you are probably already feeling like a true master of the topic. But today, you will become even greater, because today we are talking about lexical scopes. And if you want to truly understand and be a great developer with JavaScript, you definitely should master this topic as well. So, nothing else to add, sit back and enjoy the ride, because this is where JavaScript shows its true color and power. Alright, so far we learned how JavaScript handles scopes and how it climbs the ladder to find variables when you reference them. Basically, that is exactly where lexical scopes come to the rescue. You can see it as a blueprint on how your variables are organized. Sounds intriguing, right? Well, let's break it down. Lexical scoping means that a scope of a variable is defined while writing the code, not at runtime. So basically, you can imagine it like a process of building a house. And each function is a separate room inside of that house. And how you should imagine the organization in JavaScript is exactly the same like that. You have inner rooms, which you can access only by walking through the outer rooms. So, in order to get to a room B, you have to walk through the room A. And by doing that, you basically saw what is contained inside of the room A in order to reach the room B. So room B knows what is inside of room A. But on the other hand, when you are trying to enter room A, you do not have to know what is inside of room B, because you did not have to walk through it in order to reach room A. So when we flip that into context of JavaScript, when you are working with outer function, you do not know what is contained inside of inner function, because that is room you did not have to walk through in order to reach the outer function, or the room A in our case. And when it comes to the room B, you had to walk through the room A in order to reach it. I hope this makes sense. But even if it doesn't, let me jump into IDE and show you some nice examples to make things even simpler. Now that we are in our IDE and we have this small piece of code at our disposal, we can discuss what is going on inside of it and how lexical scopes work in action. So, what we have here is a function called outer function, and inside of it we have a variable called outer var, and then we have inner function where we are trying to print out the value from outer var. And basically, because as we spoke about in the terminology with rooms, inner function is a room that requires you to pass through the outer function in order to reach it. You know what is inside of the room A or inside of the other function. So inner function knows exactly what is stored inside outer function. In our case, that is outer variable, which we are familiar with. So we can print out its value. And when I run this code, indeed we do get a response. Have in mind that this relationship is created while code is being written, not while it's running. So have in mind that the place where you put your code does matter a lot in JavaScript. Now let's take it up a notch. Let us discuss a scenario while working with closures, and try to explain and understand how lexical scopes work while discussing it through the context of closures. Because closures, if you remember the previous videos we spoke about, there we discussed that closures allow us that inner function can access the variables from the outer function even when the outer function is no longer executing. So it basically remembers the state while it was executing. And in our example right here, when we take a look at this code, we can see that we have create counter function, which we are going to store inside a variable called counter, and then we just trigger it 3 times. And when we do that, we basically have incremented the value stored in the variable count 3 times. We are starting from 0, so it will be 1, 2, and 3. And when we print it all out, we will get 1, 2, and 3, which is right here. So what this means actually is that our closure here is going to remember the state of this variable even after create counter function is no longer executing. So when we execute this line, we have just executed this part and defined this function. So it is not executed yet. It just set the initial value to counter to 0, and it did nothing else. Now when we run this, then we are returning the value which is incremented by 1, and also the value is getting printed. So whenever we run this, we are accessing this variable even though we are not running the function itself. So this value right here is stored and available to us whenever we are calling this function right here. And to end things with a bang, we'll discuss a real-world scenario. We have a function called createGreeter where we're passing parameter called greeting while we define the createGreeter function. So when we run createGreeter function, we need to specify what is going to be greeting, and then when we execute this instance we have created, that is when we are passing the name, and both of these values should be available to us. Now, while we are on the subject, let us try to execute this code in our minds before we run it actually. So first things, we are creating a greeter and we define what is going to be the greeting. In the first scenario, it will be hello, and in the second one, hi. And now when we run the hello greeting and provide it with name Alice, it is supposed to say hello Alice. And when we run greeting hi, we should specify again name, and in our case let it be Bob, and then we should receive result which is going to be hi Bob. And when we run the code, that is exactly what we are getting. Hello Alice and hi Bob. So what is happening here is, again, this function right here, which is a closure basically, remembers what is the greeting, and then when you invoke the function itself, it will just append the greeting that it remembered with the name it just received. And that is why we get the results we expected. So right now I hope that the entire story around lexical scoping makes sense to you, and if it doesn't, I know it's a complex topic. Please feel free to leave a comment and I'll do my best to address all of your questions and concerns. And also, if you enjoyed this video or found it useful, I would like to kindly invite you to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notifications so you never miss another one of these fun and educational videos. And as always, thank you for watching and happy coding!